You know, when we think of a great city, we usually picture this long, continuous story, right? Like layers of history just neatly building on top of each other. But Berlin? Berlin is different. Its story isn't one of smooth growth. It's a story of constant, jarring breaks, and then radical reinvention. It's a city that's really defined by what it's survived. And that right there is the whole key. This quote gets right to the heart of Berlin's identity. See, instead of paving over its really difficult past, the city puts it right on display. And this acknowledgement of rupture, of its broken and fragmented history, is exactly what makes it so fascinating. I mean, just walk through Berlin and you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll see a building facade riddled with bullet scars right next to a gleaming new office tower, or a piece of the old wall next to a bustling street market. The past isn't just something you read about in a book here. It's an active, visible part of the present. Okay, so to really get Berlin, we have to start by looking at this history of being broken and rebuilt, over and over again. The city's growth was never, ever a straight line. It was more like a series of dramatic, full-stop resets. And just look at this timeline. You can see how dramatic these shifts really were. Each one of these phases wasn't just a new chapter. It was like hitting the reset button on the entire city. From being the center of an empire to being reduced to ashes in war, then being literally torn in two, and finally becoming this huge experiment in reunification. Each one of these events just fundamentally broke and then remade the city. So what's the result of all that chaos? Well, it's actually pretty fascinating. It created a city that is totally comfortable with being unfinished. This idea of incompleteness, it sounds like a weakness, right? But in Berlin, it's a superpower. It's what made the city so incredibly adaptable and resilient, a place that just knows how to improvise. Of all the breaks in Berlin's history, none is more iconic, more defining than the Berlin Wall. It wasn't just a barrier. It was this brutal act of urban design that literally created two completely different worlds inside the same city limits. Think about it. For almost 30 years, Berlin was a real-time, side-by-side experiment in two opposing ideologies. As you can see here, the communist East and the capitalist West developed completely different ways of life. Everything from architecture to the economy was different, creating these two distinct worlds separated by a concrete wall. These dates, they tell a story all on their own. 1961, the city is severed, almost overnight. Then, 1989, the wall crumbles, and it unleashes this wave of both euphoria and total uncertainty. And by 1990, a new, unified Germany is born, with Berlin right back at its heart. But here's the thing, tearing down a wall of concrete doesn't magically heal a divided city. In a lot of ways, it did the opposite. It exposed just how deep those differences had become. Even today, you can still trace the ghost of the wall in everything from voting patterns and how wealth is distributed to just the general vibe of different neighborhoods. So, this fractured history led to a really strange paradox after reunification. The city's biggest perceived weakness, its lack of economic power, well, that actually became its greatest cultural strength. It's a wild question, isn't it? How on earth does a city that isn't a financial powerhouse become one of the most vibrant cultural hubs on the planet? Well, the answer lies in the empty spaces, the creative gaps that history left behind. Okay, so here's the key thing you have to understand. Unlike, say, London or Paris, Berlin is not Germany's financial center. That power is spread out across other cities. So when the wall fell, big global corporations didn't just rush in and start building skyscrapers, and that left a huge vacuum. And this vacuum, this lack of intense economic pressure, it created this perfect storm. All of a sudden, there was all this cheap available space. Abandoned factories and empty apartments became artist studios, nightclubs, and galleries. It became a magnet for artists, students, and migrants who had big ideas but not a lot of money. It became a city that valued experimentation way more than profit. Yeah, this quote just absolutely nails it. For years, Berlin wasn't trying to be Frankfurt or Munich. It wasn't competing for corporate headquarters. Instead, it was incubating, just letting all these strange, wonderful, and innovative ideas grow in all of its empty spaces. But of course, a phase like that can't last forever. The world eventually noticed what was going on in Berlin. The secret got out. And now, that very success is creating a whole new set of challenges for the city. It's a classic story, really, and you can see the chain reaction right here. First, that amazing culture that grew out of affordability started attracting a new wave of tech startups, tourists, and media companies. Then, the investment money followed that creative energy. And then, boom, rents started to rise and gentrification began to spread, threatening the very ecosystem that made Berlin so special in the first place. And wow, this chart just lays it all out in stark numbers. The affordability that defined post-wall Berlin is disappearing, and fast. The city that was once famously called poor but sexy is now staring down a major housing crisis, which is a direct result of its own success.
So this brings us to the huge dilemma facing Berlin today. Can the city's defining characteristic, its incredible openness to experimentation, to subcultures, to people from all walks of life, can that possibly survive in an era of skyrocketing costs? That is the billion-dollar question.
So what does the future hold for Berlin? Well, the answer might lie in this concept, unfinished by design. The city's identity has never been a finished product. It's always been a work in progress, this constant conversation about what it wants to be next.
And this brings us right back to where we started. Berlin confronts its history head-on. It doesn't hide its scars. It puts them out there for everyone to see, through memorials and preserved ruins. This public memory ensures that those difficult conversations about the past are always part of the present, and they always help shape its future.
And this quote, this explains so much about why things can feel, well, slow in Berlin sometimes. The bureaucracy, the endless public debates over new construction, it's not just inefficiency, it's a reflection of a city that really values process and negotiation. Change isn't just forced from the top down, it's argued over, street by street. So what's the big takeaway here? Ultimately, Berlin gives us this powerful model for how a city can not only survive immense trauma, but actually thrive because of it. It shows us that moving forward doesn't mean forgetting the past, but building a future in a constant, active dialogue with it. And in the end, this might just be the most accurate description of Berlin there is. It's not a place with all the answers, it's a place of constant argument about its past, its present, and its future. That ongoing, vibrant, and often messy argument, that is the city.